At exactly 17 seconds into the live broadcast, Jasmine Crockett sliced open a blood-red folder like she was pulling the pin on a grenade and said a name no one dared touch. Trump's jaw locked. His eyes flicked. The cameras caught everything as silence thundered through the room. What did she unleash? That made a former president look like the ghost wasn't in his past but sitting right across from him. At exactly 9:00 a.m., three red lights blinked on like sniper dots. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. Live, no delay, no script left to hide behind. The hearing room didn't feel like a place for truth. It felt like a trap set in marble. Flags hung limp like props. Microphones sat like landmines on the desk. Even the air seemed stage cold, still watching. Then she walked in. Jasmine Crockett didn't storm the room. She sliced through it. No aid. No water bottle. Just a blood-red envelope tucked under her arm like it carried someone's last breath. Her heels clicked like countdowns. Her stare didn't blink. She didn't come to play politics. She came to light a fuse. Across from her, Donald Trump shifted, but just a little. Like something under his skin knew what was coming before his brain did. On his right, Jim Jordan's jaw, clenched eyes twitching like a boxer who's already behind on points. On his left, Elise Stefanik, fake smiling like this was just another speech. But even her fingers twitched at the sight of that red envelope. Jasmine sat, didn't speak, just tapped the envelope once, then twice, a third time. The sound echoed like a heartbeat right before flatline. The cameras zoomed in. The nation held its breath. And for the first time in years, the man who bragged he feared nothing adjusted his tie like it was choking him. What was inside that envelope? Why did one woman alone, unarmed, unshaken, make the most powerful room in America sit up like they just heard footsteps in a locked house? And if she hadn't even spoken yet, what happens when she does? The envelope still sat untouched on the table like a detonator waiting for the right breath. Jasmine didn't reach for it. She reached for the mic. Her voice when it came wasn't loud, but it cut like glass. "Mr. Chairman, I request 5 minutes. No emotion, just command." Like she was issuing a warrant, not asking for time. Chairman Richard Mallon didn't even look up from his papers. "The Congresswoman will yield." "No," she said sharper this time. "I will not yield." She turned her eyes to the camera. "Because the girls I'm about to speak for never had time. No yield, no mic. Just rooms full of men who said, 'Be quiet and smile.'" That's when the room changed. Reporters lifted their heads. Staffers stopped pretending to shuffle papers. Even the GOP side stiffened. And then without invitation, Jasmine stood up. Trump smirked, leaning back like a man watching bad theater. He turned slightly in his chair, just enough to show he wasn't worried. Jasmine turned her full body toward him. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't blink. "The man who thinks he owns this country once asked a 14-year-old girl to call him Mr. D." The words landed like a brick through stained glass. Trump's smirk twitched. Stefanik flinched. Jim Jordan whispered something behind his palm, suddenly wide-eyed. Jasmine didn't flinch. She just stared. "I won't say her full name," she said quietly. "Not yet. But I will speak for her. And the others. Because this house, this Capitol, sure as hell never did. What if the name she's about to say is one the system buried on purpose?" No one moved. The air was coiled so tight it could snap from a breath. Jasmine reached into her blazer pocket, not for the envelope this time, but for a flash drive. Mate black, government, sealed. She held it up like a scalpel in a surgeon's hand. "This," she said, "is an authenticated audio file. Confirmed by federal forensic teams. Originally recorded in Palm Beach, 2002. The chair leaned forward, lips parted like he might object. But he didn't. Because Jasmine was already walking toward the console. She plugged the drive in, clicked once, then stepped back, arms behind her. The room filled with a soft crackle. Then came a voice, female, young, shaky. He wore gold rings, a gold watch. He had power. The other men called him boss, and they said he'd be president one day. A chill spread across the room like a slow leak of ice water. Reporters turned pale. Elise Stefanik lowered her head. Jordan blinked, stunned, and Trump exploded. "Lies," he roared, slamming his palm onto the wood. This is defamation. I demand that be struck from the record. This is a political hit job. The chair shouted, Mr. Trump, you are not recognized to speak. But Jasmine didn't move, didn't speak. She stared at Trump like she was watching something die inside him. Then, soft enough that only the closest mics picked it up, she whispered, you know what you did. The silence afterward wasn't quiet, it was charged, like a fuse had been lit and no one knew how long the wire was. Is this just the beginning? Or the final nail in a buried past? Trump was still fuming, hands, clenched jaw tight like it might snap. The chair called order 3 times before the room finally steadied, but the energy had shifted. Jasmine hadn't moved since she whispered the words that shattered the illusion. Now she turned toward the next witness, like someone flipping a page in a book she'd already read. Dr. Caleb Morrison rose from the second row, mid-40s. Quiet posture, eyes like a man who's seen things no one can unsee. He wore a plain gray suit and carried a silver case. No press release, no agenda, just data. Please state your credentials, the chair said. I'm a systems analyst and aerospace imaging specialist at NASA's Langley Research Center. I oversee geospatial data pulled from the Landsat satellite array, specifically referencing thermal signatures and object tracking across restricted zones. Jasmine nodded. Dr. Morrison, what did you find in the satellite footage from July 7, 2003? He opened the case and pulled out a large printed image. Not a photo, a thermal scan, hazy but clear. This is Little St. James Epstein's Island. Timestamp 1514 GMT. The satellite picked it up glowing red hot like gilt under a microscope, heat pooled around the helipad in 2 guest villas. Registered flight ID matches, Gulfstream 4, tail number N725DT. The room inhaled all at once. Jasmine's voice was quiet. Who owns that plane? Dr. Morrison didn't flinch. Records from FAA show the Gulfstream 4 was registered to Trump Aviation LLC from 1998 to 2005. The heat signature places it on the island within 14 minutes of touchdown. That's when Trump froze, not loud this time. Just still. Like the room had reached into the past and dragged something ugly into daylight. Can you erase a moment? When the sky saw everything, Trump was still staring at the satellite image, but his eyes weren't focused anymore. It was the look of a man doing math in his head, calculating what the public now knew, and what might still be buried. Jasmine didn't give him time to breathe. She lifted a leather-bound folder and let it fall open with a soft thump on the desk. The mic picked it up. So did every camera in the room. These, she said, are Donald Trump's travel logs, filed with the FAA, archived by the National Archives, and subpoenaed during a separate investigation. She flipped pages like turning knives. June 29th, July 7th, July 21st. All logged flights from Palm Beach to St. Thomas, and all aligned with Jeffrey Epstein's missing calendar entries. GOP members stirred. One shouted, "Point of order." Another banged a pen against his folder. Chairman Mallon leaned forward. "Congresswoman." But Jasmine didn't blink. She raised her hand, calm as a heart surgeon. "Let me finish." She turned back to Trump. "You've said on record that you never set foot on Epstein's island." She held up one page. "This says otherwise." Trump leaned toward his mic, voice trembling more than he meant. "You're twisting timelines. You're doing this for headlines." Jasmine stepped forward. Her tone didn't rise, it lowered, like a guillotine before the drop. "Then clarify it, right now, on live television. If you didn't go, tell America where you were. Why does the truth always look like a threat to those who hide it?" The room was already cracking at the edges, Trump's voice shaking the GOP in defensive chaos, but no one expected what happened next. From the third row behind the press box, a woman stood up. She wasn't on any list. She wasn't supposed to be here. Her voice came fast, loud, and ragged. "I was silenced. I saw that photo in 2011. I signed a non-disclosure under threat." Every head turned. Security flinched into motion. One officer began moving down the aisle, hand already on his radio. But the woman didn't flinch. She stepped forward. "You buried it." "You all buried it. That's his signature in the flight logs." "I saw the original. I helped redact it." The room spiraled into low gasps and rapid flashes. Reporters fumbled for mics. Someone whispered, "Who is she?" Jasmine didn't panic. She didn't consult a rule book. She simply raised her hand palm down. "Let her speak," she said, clear, firm, final. The chair stammered. "Ms. Crockett, this is irregular." So was the cover-up, she shot back. "She's Rachel Delgado, former assistant prosecutor, SDNY 2010-2013. Rachel's voice cracked now, but she didn't stop. "I begged to testify back then. They told me I'd ruin my career, that it was too much heat for one man's name." Jasmine looked at her not with pity but fire. "And today we bring the heat. How many voices were buried, just so one man could rise?" The room didn't settle after Rachel sat down. It just waited like a fuse, still sizzling. Jasmine reached under her desk, slowly lifting a second envelope, larger than the first. This one was marked Exhibit E42. The seal was still intact. Her fingers paused on the edge, then tore through it in one clean motion. Inside was a single document, thick cardstock names, printed in sharp black ink. But half of them had been redacted. Solid black bars like coffins covering identities the world had been denied for years. 31 names, Jasmine said, holding it up so the cameras could catch the seal. Redacted by federal order. Buried by bipartisan silence. Preserved not to protect the innocent, but the influential. She paused, then flipped the top page. One name was partially unsealed under Section 18B. Entry number 7. She held the document closer to the mic. Donald J. Trump flight ID logged 4 times within a 2-month window. A hush snapped through the room like a camera shutter. Fox News cut to commercial. CNN did not. Trump didn't shout this time. He just shook his head slowly, lips pressed tight, sweat pooling just above his collar. His hands were gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping him from sliding out of frame. These names, Jasmine said, turning back to the room, weren't blacked out to protect the victims. They were blacked out to protect a system. And what happens when protection turns into complicity? The name had been said, out loud, under oath. And now the room didn't just fall silent, it froze. Elise Stefanik sat perfectly still, then subtly shifted her chair just enough to put half a foot of distance between her and Trump. Her hands disappeared under the table. She wouldn't make eye contact with the cameras. Not anymore. Jim Jordan, who had been whispering nonstop before, stared straight ahead now. His lips were pursed, his knuckles white. When Jasmine caught his glance, he immediately looked down at his own shoes like they had something new to say. Across the aisle, Senior Will Hawthorne leaned into his aide and whispered behind a folder. "We need subpoenas. Now. Before this buries us too." Trump heard it. He turned. Fast. His voice cracked before it hit volume. "That's not even my handwriting." He pointed toward the flight logs like they might bite him. "It's fake. They faked it. Everyone in this room knows it." Jasmine didn't flinch. She stepped closer. Her voice was soft, but every word struck like a match. "Then who wrote your flight logs, Mr. Trump? The Tooth Fairy? The Weatherman?" Trump opened his mouth, then closed it. The pause stretched too long. Even the mic stopped humming. And that's when it hit the crowd that once clapped for him, was holding its breath instead. When the applause dies and your defenders look away, what's left but the echo of your own denial? The silence around Trump wasn't calm, it was radioactive. No one reached for their phones. No one whispered. The entire room was frozen, as if daring Jasmine Crockett to say what everyone else feared to even think. She didn't look at Trump. She didn't look at the chair or the witnesses or the blinking lights on the news cameras. She looked through the lens into the millions watching at home, into the living rooms and hospital beds and dormitories where young women were still being told to smile, stay small, and survive. Her voice didn't rise. It sank low, deliberate, exact. For every girl who was told to shut up, today I speak. This isn't about left or right. This isn't about polls or elections. This is about memory, about whose pain we're allowed to remember and whose we're paid to forget. And let's be real clear, this man sitting behind a nameplate and a lawyer's smirk. "You act like Hitler." The room gasped. Trump sat bolt upright, face flushed purple. Reporters jolted in their seats. One camera tilted as a tech nearly dropped it. Jasmine kept going. "Only richer, only more dangerous. Because you don't need a military uniform when you've got networks, courts, and cowards to protect you." The chair slammed the gavel once, twice. Order. But Jasmine never looked away from the camera. You can silence a witness, you can redact a name, but you cannot bury what refuses to stay dead. Is this what justice looks like? When it finally breaks through silence. By midnight, the machine was already moving. Fox News anchors lined up like soldiers, their scripts synchronized. Unhinged, reckless, a disgrace to Congress. Tucker Carlson replayed her monologue on a loop, eyes narrowed like he was watching a crime scene. Hashtags like radical Jasmine and liar. In lipstick trended by Dawn, boosted by accounts with usernames like Patriot Justice 88 and Epstein Truth Deniers. Jasmine's inbox was a battlefield. Hundreds of emails, death threats written in all caps, Bible verses twisted into curses. Her phone buzzed every 5 seconds. Some messages were threats. Others were worse recordings of screaming, of crying children. Then came the doll. Her chief of staff, Eric, found it hanging from the doorknob outside her DC apartment, head torn off, red ink smeared down its plastic dress, a note stapled to its chest. Say one more name. We dare you. Jasmine didn't scream. She didn't cry. But that night when her phone lit up with mom calling, she picked it up faster than usual. They want to break you, her mother said from Dallas, voice low and steady. I know, Jasmine whispered. But they forgot who raised me. She looked out the window. Police lights flashed across the dark street. She didn't feel brave, but she felt ready. Because this time they weren't trying to bury the truth. They were trying to bury her. How far will they go to silence one woman, and how far will she go to speak? The studio was colder than she expected. Not in temperature, but in tone, like the walls had absorbed too many secrets over the years. Jasmine sat under white lights that made everything look sharper than real life. Her mic was clipped, her hands steady in her lap. This wasn't Congress. This was the nation's living room. Across from her, Rachel Maddow leaned in, not smiling, not performing, just listening. Why now, she asked, voice quiet but direct. Jasmine didn't pause. Because I'm tired of waiting for someone else to do it. Her voice didn't tremble. It didn't rise. It simply existed like something unmovable. The screen behind them flickered. MSNBC played the now viral clip, "You act like Hitler." The audio cut off before the gavel slammed, but the echo of it filled the silence between them. Rachel looked at her eyebrows lifted. Jasmine met the stare. That's not a metaphor, she said. That's a mirror. Gasps broke across social media within seconds. Twitter hashtags spun like blades. Millions watched not just for content, but for confirmation. Jasmine wasn't walking anything back. She was walking forward. If that truth makes people uncomfortable, she added, then maybe they've gotten a little too comfortable with what power looks like. She didn't blink when the show went to commercial. What if calling out power is the most American thing you can do? It arrived in the morning mail sandwiched between protest letters and death threats. No return address, no postmark. Just a manila envelope with her name printed in shaky black ink. No title, no congresswoman, just Jasmine. Her aide Eric brought it in like it was radioactive. You need to see this. She slid it open with a pen, not expecting much, until the photograph slid out and landed face up on her desk. For a second, she didn't breathe. There they were. Donald J. Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, shoulder to shoulder, standing on the gravel path of Little St. James Island. Dated in the corner July 12, 2002. High resolution, uncropped. Behind them, a blurred figure. Small, possibly female. Hair in a braid. There was a yellow sticky note stuck to the back of the photo. Emily wasn't the only one. The room went still. Eric stepped back instinctively, as if the image itself might detonate. Jasmine stared at it at Trump's sunglasses, Epstein's smile, the unspoken shadows in between. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak right away. Then she leaned forward, elbows on the desk, eyes locked on the girl in the background. Oh, it's not over, she whispered. Because if Emily was one, how many others never had a name, and who amid all the power, silence, and fear was still brave enough to send this "Who is Emily?" And who sent this? 3 days later, she came back. The Capitol hearing room wasn't quieter, it was tenser, like it remembered the last time she was here, and the scars hadn't faded. Cameras were already rolling when Jasmine Crockett stepped through the same door, but this time she didn't carry just a folder. She carried a reckoning. The folder was red again, but thicker now, its edges worn its seal frayed, like something had clawed to get out. She placed it down softly, deliberately. The sound echoed like a soft drum beat of return. Jim Jordan stood before she could even sit. "Mr. Chairman, I object to her presence. This is turning into a personal crusade." But Mallon cut him off. "The Congresswoman will proceed." The tone wasn't a favor. It was surrender. Jasmine adjusted the mic without a word, looked around the room like she was taking roll. "I told you I'd be back," she said. "And this time I brought friends." She opened the folder, pulled out 5 sealed envelopes, laid them out like evidence bags. "These are sworn written testimonies from 4 more women, submitted through legal counsel. All share one detail in common: a man who wore gold, and silence like armor." Trump didn't flinch, but for the first time his lawyer did. Jasmine's voice dropped. "This was never about just one name. That's what terrifies you. What's more terrifying than one voice? 5 more echoing it." The chair called the next witness. From the side door emerged a woman in full uniform, dark blazer, gold badge, clipped to her belt. No makeup, no hesitation. Agent Marcy Bell, Department of Homeland Security, ICE Financial Crimes Division. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. She walked like she'd carried weight heavier than truth before. She placed a black folder on the table. Stamped, sealed by court order, 2023. 2 years ago, she said, ICE intercepted encrypted financial transfers from shell corporations in Cyprus, routed through Deutsche Bank and ending in a Florida trust linked as she turned toward the screen behind her 2 known Trump associates. She clicked a remote. A diagram bloomed across the wall. Names, arrows, routing numbers, dates. Jasmine didn't move. She let the silence soak. 3.2 million issued over 18 months. Paid to legal representatives of 3 women, all with sealed non-disclosure agreements related to Epstein's inner circle. Someone audibly gasped. A GOP aide stepped out of the room. Agent Bell added almost too calmly, "The DOJ has the documents. They were signed under seal and labeled national security due to potential political fallout." Jasmine leaned in. Her voice had no theater left in it, just steel. "Will we now agree? This is no longer a partisan show." For once, no one answered her. What happens when the institutions start talking? By sunrise the next morning, the Capitol steps looked like a battlefield of conscience. Hundreds stood shoulder to shoulder, fists raised, holding cardboard signs that bled ink under soft rain. "Protect her. Prosecute him. Power is not immunity. Say her name. Say Emily." What started with one voice had become a street choir of fury. By noon it was thousands. Drone footage looped across every major network, clips of veterans, nurses, teachers, even Republican mothers holding banners that read, "I voted for him, not for this." One clip showed a Marine Corps veteran in uniform, tears streaming down his face, holding a cardboard sign with shaky handwriting, "Say her name, Emily." He didn't chant. He just stood still. The chants around him were not angry. They were resolved, like a heartbeat finally steady after years of suppression. Inside Capitol Hill, phones rang off the hook. Donor groups pulled funding from 3 GOP members by name. One lobbyist leaked an email to the press. "We backed the wrong horse." Meanwhile, Jasmine's campaign site crashed from too many donations. One supporter left a comment that swept through social media like wildfire. "I don't care what party she's in. She's doing what no one else had the guts to do." That night, Jasmine tweeted only once. No slogans, no hashtags. Truth doesn't trend. But it lasts. The tweet hit 1 million likes in 6 hours. But that was not the point. Because for the first time since the hearings began, the system was no longer leading the story. The people were. What if a story can do what the system will not hold someone accountable? The crack didn't come with a bang. It came with all caps. Live on Truth Social, Donald Trump posted 3 words in under 7 seconds. Witch hunt, liar, hoax. Then another, traitor. Then 10 more. They're all in on it. They want to silence me. His thumbs couldn't keep up with his rage. That morning, a press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. It was canceled at 9:17 with no reason given. By 11, 2 of Trump's senior legal advisors had been fired, one by text, the other found out through a reporter's tweet. Inside, Mar-a-Lago staff said they heard shouting behind 3 locked doors. Melania hadn't been seen in 5 days. Her last public appearance was a charity event where she spoke for exactly 6 minutes and mentioned her husband 0 times. When asked where she'd gone, her team replied with a single line: "No comment at this time." Jasmine said nothing. No press tour, no interviews. Just one quiet post. Survivors remember what silence cost. The words weren't directed at anyone, but they landed like a sniper shot, precise, devastating, impossible to trace back, yet impossible to ignore. By midnight, her post had been shared across every platform, stitched into protest signs whispered between survivors. Trump was screaming into a void. Jasmine didn't have to raise her voice. She had already taken the room. Is silence louder than screaming? The Justice Department didn't blink. At exactly 4:00 p.m., Attorney General Merrick Garland stepped behind a dark oak podium, his voice level but unmistakably loaded. The Department of Justice is opening a formal inquiry into potential obstruction of justice related to the Epstein investigation, including the concealment of key witness testimonies and interference with federal processes. He didn't say a name. He didn't have to. The room went still, then exploded. Headlines lit up like sirens. Anchors fumbled their scripts. Fox News cut back to coverage, but now with visibly shaken commentators. America wasn't watching political theater anymore. It was watching something crack under real weight. That night, Jasmine Crockett received a call. She was invited to a classified, closed-door briefing, one that required biometric clearance and 3 layers of federal authorization. Her response was one sentence: "Send the address." Word spread quickly. Jim Jordan, red-faced and cornered by reporters, barked his now viral reply: "This is war." Cameras turned to Jasmine as she left her office, walking into the night, no bodyguards visible, only purpose. She paused, looked straight into the lens, and answered, "No, this is reckoning." She didn't stop walking. She didn't need to. Because for the first time, the system wasn't just reacting. It was awakening. Is America ready for what it's about to learn? She didn't walk out flanked by aides or hidden behind tinted glass. She walked out alone. The steps of the Capitol were flooded with light phones. Cameras, boom mics extended like spears from every direction. Reporters shouted over one another. Flash bulbs cracked like lightning. But Jasmine moved slow, steady, as if the chaos belonged to someone else. She reached the last step and paused. The crowd surged closer. One voice pierced through the noise. A journalist from NBC leaned forward, mic trembling in hand. "What do you want to say to the people still protecting him?" Jasmine didn't answer right away. She turned just enough for every camera to catch her eyes. And then she looked straight into the main lens. Her voice was low, unshaken. "If the truth makes you uncomfortable, maybe you're standing on the wrong side of it." No one asked a follow-up. No one needed to. For a moment, even the press forgot how to speak. That one line replayed across every news network within the hour. It became the caption on protest banners. It was etched onto posters in Times Square. Seniors shared it at breakfast tables. Teenagers carved it into TikToks. Churches debated it. Schools quoted it. She didn't stay for applause. She just walked off into the night. And the country asked itself a question it hadn't dared face in years. Whose side will history remember? She didn't tell the press she was coming. She didn't alert her office. She just went home. Dallas was humid that afternoon. The streets felt smaller than she remembered, but the faces hadn't changed. Old neighbors stood on porches, arms folded, eyes shining with something more powerful than pride. It was recognition. As Jasmine walked down the block, kids ran toward her like she was a superhero straight off TV. "Look, it's the fighter," one yelled, hugging her waist like he didn't care about headlines or hearings. Just that she came back. She smiled, really smiled, for the first time in weeks. And when she reached the front door of the house she grew up in, it opened before she knocked. Her mother pulled her into an embrace so tight it squeezed the oxygen from her ribs. "I thought they'd break you," her mother whispered, eyes wet, voice cracking. Jasmine leaned into her shoulder. "They tried," she said softly. "But they forgot where I'm from." Inside, the kitchen still smelled like collard greens. The same photo of her in a high school debate suit hung crooked on the hallway wall. No marble, no microphones, just roots. And in that moment, she remembered what every fight had been for. What keeps someone going when the world wants her silent? The house was small brick, fading from years of southern sun, but the silence inside felt heavier than marble. Jasmine stepped through the door and found her in the kitchen, an older woman in a faded blue robe, hands trembling just slightly as she wiped them on a dish rag that had no reason to be wet. No words, no press, just two women who had both lost something the world could never return. The mother didn't speak. She only hugged Jasmine tight and quiet, like she'd been holding that embrace for years. Then she walked to the bedroom and came back with a worn leather diary, its edges curled like burnt paper. She opened it to a page near the center and handed it over. Jasmine read the single line written in a teenage scrawl. If someone just said my name, maybe I wouldn't feel so invisible. The room cracked open, Jasmine's throat locked. Her eyes burned. She stared at the page like it might swallow her whole. Then she closed the book and held it to her chest. I said it, she whispered, and I'll keep saying it. The mother nodded once, tears sliding down her face without permission. Jasmine didn't promise justice. She had learned better. But she did promise memory, because sometimes saying the name was the only justice the world was willing to give. How many names are still waiting to be spoken? The set was dark, just one spotlight. No hearing room, no gavel, just Jasmine Crockett and the lens of a nation that had finally stopped flipping channels. She stood still for a long second before speaking, not rehearsing, just breathing. This isn't about politics, she said slowly. It's about power, and what happens when we let it rot in silence. Images flickered behind her faces, folders redacted names, blurred flight logs, the girl in the photo, whose name was finally spoken. She didn't call out parties. She called out fear. I didn't speak because I'm brave, she said, voice tightening. I spoke because I couldn't carry their silence anymore. She looked straight into the camera, just like she had outside the Capitol. But this time there was no anger, no gavel slamming. Only truth, raw, heavy, unshakable. She paused one last time. No cue cards. Just one ask. Whose silence are we still carrying? Some names were blacked out with ink, others were erased by silence. But Jasmine showed the entire nation that when one person dares to speak for those the system forgot, even power has to listen. Is there a name you've buried just to survive? Maybe it's time to let it breathe. If this story stayed with you, don't scroll past it. Like, share, and subscribe to Hill Insights, where buried names are spoken and silence is no longer safe. Tap the bell, because next time the silence we break might be yours. Which moment made you pause, made you feel, made you remember? Tell us in the comments. Some truths only rise when someone like you dares to speak. This dramatized story is inspired by real struggles and real people. All characters and dialogue are fictionalized for commentary and education. It is not intended to defame or mislead, but to inspire reflection and civic awareness. Thanks for watching. The truth isn't gone, it's just waiting to be heard.